Please welcome Lisa Salsa with me from Amnesty International Switzerland. And the first news I have to give you is that during the film, Carol has written to me, or not even herself, but her production partner, and apparently she just doesn't feel well enough. She's afraid that she might have corona, and she cannot attend the Q&A. We are very sorry about this, and she's also very sorry. She says hi, but I guess she just didn't feel well enough. So we will have to do without her. I'm sure we can still, of course, we can still discuss the film and especially the topics and also the connections to Brazil today. But just one question: we could switch to German if we wanted. But is there anyone who prefers English? Does anyone prefer English? Yes, okay, so we stay with English. Good. First of all, maybe I try to integrate the first question I had for Carol, and then we go on. But something that really struck me in this film at the end also is how she addresses her children and what she calls a dystopia of the moment. This was 2 years ago of Brazil, and how with this end she really makes it about communication between generations. And I think it's especially interesting that as her father didn't want to participate in the film, and at the same time we even hear at the end that he wouldn't even mention his mother, that it's so interesting that Carol Benjamin managed to make this film that finally was much more about her grandmother, of course, but about activism, about women, about mothers, about friendship in activism. And I think this is really, really interesting. And this all may be only made possible because the father didn't want to speak. So I really appreciate this approach. This is just something that really hit me about the film. But Lisa, to give you the opportunity to start to talk about I Owe You a Letter About Brazil, I think a very important role in this film, of course, goes to Marianne Eire, and this activist from Amnesty International in Sweden. Without her, or without this relationship between Iramaya and her, we wouldn't even have all those details that we have through the letters that we get in the film. So you who works for Amnesty International, or maybe also just as a person in general, as an impression of the film, what do you think about this relation and activism together? Like what is this friendship and activism together? What is this for you, or what can you say about this? It's on.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes, first of all, I would like to say that really it's also as an Amnesty International member, and actually knowing of our campaigns and also of the impact of our campaigns, it's very, very touchy and emotional to see really what it provokes in people like César. And it's sometimes in our daily work we also feel like it's difficult to really change the world, but when you hear ex or actual prisoners of conscience saying that the letters they received from Amnesty gave them so much strength, then it's like giving you this extra punch you sometimes need really to carry on in a world which sometimes makes you desperate. And obviously it's not possible to have this strong relationship with every prisoner of conscience, as it had Marianne with well, it was more with Iramaya, with his mother, because there are so many. It's really sad, but there are so many, and also, for example, I am covering like whole Latin America, Europe, and Central Asia. So I'm really trying to get track of so many destinies, and so yeah, but still when I read our reports from our researchers, there are always personal stories, and they still touch me a lot. And I think we do have, like for some countries like Brazil, like country experts, voluntary people who have a strong relationship with this country, and actually they do manage to develop these strong relationships with some people. So that is really nice, because sometimes it's really the effort of one individual person who makes, for example, a person the prisoner of the year, or
so yeah, this strange label in a way of prisoner of the year. Do you think this would not have? I mean, is the engagement, or how do you say, the engagement of Iramaya, this, and also her connections, of course, that she seemed to have had also to the military. It was really her effort who made César Benjamin become the prisoner of the year, or so important for Amnesty International, or was it more factors? Or can you tell us more about this campaign as well?
Yes, well, I don't have so many details of this campaign, but it's funny. I looked for, because I don't think we have this kind of archives as the Amnesty Swedish section has, or I didn't manage to find. We should have. Or I think we keep still some dossiers of persons, but yes. But I found, I still found an annual report of 1975 and 76, and the case of César was presented as very important or prominent for Brazil. And I think it's a mixture. Of course, we do have like strong criteria on whom we could adopt as a political prisoner, and others that unfortunately we can't. But at the same time, as I told before, there are so many, unfortunately, political prisoners that it's practically impossible to adopt everyone. So it sometimes really also depends on a personal engagement, and just to keep on fighting and yes. But also, I think in this context, it was so. I mean, the case of Benjamin César is really a strong one. He was imprisoned when he was still a juvenile, and he received like torture. He was kept in solitary confinement as the only juvenile prisoner. So it's really a hard case. And so I think it was not only because of Iramaya's compromise, but it helped. I think.
And to make maybe a first link to today, Amnesty International also has a Amnesty International section, or you call it section, yes, in Brazil itself. What is Amnesty International doing now, or what are the focuses now in Brazil?
Well, basically, Amnesty's job is always to document human rights violations and to hold the government accountable for them. So, of course, we are also observing and documenting the human rights abuses that, unfortunately, we have to say is committing the actual government. Carol is also referring to that, I think, at the end of the film. But we also have some focus, like, for example, in the last years, it was the excessive police violence which strikes prominently also young black poor men in the favelas. I think that is really one of the great tragedies of Brazil. We have a figure that's really striking, that per day 17 young black people in favelas are victims of lethal police violence. So that's really a big human rights tragedy. And the other thing we are focusing now on is the deforestation of the Amazonas, which sounds like maybe a Greenpeace issue, but actually it impacts a lot the life and the human rights of the indigenous and Quilombola communities who live there. So it's really a strong human rights issue for us, and I think it's the second greatest human rights tragedy in Brazil at the moment. Yes.
And at the moment, with the President Bolsonaro, there is a president who is a fan, or I would, a fan of the military dictatorship, who openly refers to that period of time, and yes, who celebrates this again. Yes, but at the same time, or maybe I could ask this differently. Going from the film with political prisoners, is there also a comparison on this level? Are there political prisoners in that sense at the moment, or has the repression against opposition changed, or what kind of face does it have today?
Well, I think it's not the same level of repression and systematic torture and killings of prisoners of conscience in Brazil these days. But yes, there is a president who says that the only fault of the dictatorship was to only torture its dissidents and not kill them. We have a president who gave the promise to get rid of all the activists, and he's really doing a good job until now. So yes, it's a president who praises the dictatorship, and I think after seeing this film, it's so difficult to understand how only one generation after the end of the dictatorship, a person who actually he still served as a military man during the dictatorship. Half of his cabinet, half of his ministers are military men. So yes, it's kind of difficult to understand how this could happen. But as I said, the level of repression is maybe not the same one, but they are using like more subtle means to shrink the space of the civil society being engaged. For example, one of the first moves of President Bolsonaro, I think it was on his first day, that he introduced a provisional measure to monitor and supervise all of the activities of NGOs. Under the pressure of a lot of the civil society, now the commission who had to implement this measure withdraw from the competence of the government this competence to monitor the activities of the NGOs. So fortunately, we still have a very strong civil society in Brazil, but also he diffamates, criminalizes human rights activists. He refers to them as enemies of the state, citing the national security law that was enforced during the dictatorship. And as I said before, he really gave this promise to get rid with activism. So I think this mixture of a very like a defamating ambience and combined maybe with a really widespread impunity for human rights violations, for attacks against human rights activists. You have this very famous, it's not the only case, but it's a very famous case of Marielle Franco, very strong activist for women's rights, for LGBTI rights, who has been killed 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And her case is still not entirely investigated. So you have this impunity, you have this defamating speech of high-level officials of the government and the president itself. And so it's really more subtle how the civil society is repressed, but there is, again, this repression and the shrinking of this civil space.
I would like to give the opportunity also to you to ask a question, or also if you want to make a remark about the film, please go ahead. We don't see you very well, so please just start talking if you want to say something. And if it's not loud enough, I will repeat it, if you feel like it. It's crazy that this is a sold-out audience in times of COVID. It's crazy. No, I'm just saying this as a little remark. Maybe I have something to add too, that I learned of that I would have been very curious to ask Carol, is that within the last 2 years also the whole funding of culture and film. In film, there was a very strong agency called Unseen that was in the last few years was very important for also a rise of very good and strong and critical Brazilian movies. We showed a part of those films at the Xenix a few months ago, and now with the new government, this has been really like defunded, and also Bolsonaro wants to have culture very close to himself. To influence or to control. And so it's also very actual at the moment that people probably like Carol and other filmmakers and artists have a lot of difficulty to get funding. So it's not censorship in the strict sense or so, but it's just make it complicated and make it difficult. And so that's also an aspect of such a right-wing government, also on all levels of society, also in culture. I wanted to add this.
Yes, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of details on how he actually is defunding the culture, but defunding is really also a strategy on how to tackle the like really important initiatives of the civil society. One example is, for example, that there was this great initiative or program against homophobia in schools, which was recommended and designed by UNESCO. And Bolsonaro just defunded it because he said it was motivating young people to become homosexual. So it's really, and this whole defunding thing is very common also. He defunded a lot of these associations who help actually protect the Amazon. So that's also one of these subtle ways of withdrawing space and resources of a vivid civil society, I think.
I also have a question for you again before I will ask you again if you want to say something. Is about how you mentioned that there is a lot of police violence and it's also very racialized or very racist. In the film, this is not, this story doesn't tell anything about racism, but do you know about also the sensibilization for this that a lot of the violence is also directed against people of color. Is there also a link between movements like with the US? Do you know anything about this? Or or maybe someone here does know if like Black Lives Matter in the States, or is there a connection? Maybe also like Bolsonaro and Trump are very good buddies. Maybe this can also harm Bolsonaro that Trump is not reelected. I was just wondering now if anyone knows about connections between Brazil and the US concerning protests, but also, does...
Well, actually, yes. Black Lives Matter is also very, very strong in Brazil, and sometimes the situation in the US is also very, very difficult, and it's great that so much was reported about this movement. But sometimes I also see the numbers and the people in Brazil, and it makes me think why this is so underreported, that there's also this a lot of excessive violence against black people in Brazil, because it's more. We had this campaign around also the Olympic Games and the Football World Cup, and I think we said it's like one aeroplane crashing down every month full of young people. That's more or less the record of lethal of victims of lethal police violence. So it's really a lot of human destinies, a lot of but it's really underreported. And also Bolsonaro. I mean, Amnesty doesn't really take position on presidents, but it's sometimes difficult if you also know about the situation in Brazil as an example, that so much was written about what was saying Trump, etc., and then you hear, as I said before, what Bolsonaro says, and he kind of doesn't make it in the media here. So I think it's also very important to speak about this situation in Brazil. But yes, I do think that maybe the fact that Trump is not re-elected also can harm this image of Bolsonaro. And actually under the whole corona pandemic, he also lost a lot of support because he was acting quite similarly as Trump did, and was making fun of the victims. So I think yes, it's still 2 years to go for the next election, and the opposition is not very strong, so we will see what happens. But I think he lost also a lot of support.
Please. I mean, you don't have to, but it will be very interesting to get some questions or input or remarks, even compliments for the film. I hope that Carol, it's crazy because Flavia, who should be moderating, she's also COVID positive, and Carol, it's really, we're the last. It feels scary. But is there anything you would like to add? Maybe we can find a last link to this very good film, please.
Maybe it's really, I think it's really sad that Carol is not here, because that's always a difficulty I have as an Amnesty International representative, that I'm actually talking about a country which is not mine, and I sometimes feel like I'm not allowed to say how I should, how I think it should be. But I asked actually our team in Brazil what they think should happen for the people to, for this whole situation also to change, or for the civil society to give them back this space and the meaningfulness. And they said that it would be very important to bring back the value of human rights or of fundamental rights back to the lives of the people, and also show that show off that giving rights to one marginalized groups of people, like for example the LGBTI community, doesn't withdraw rights from other people, because that's like a dichotomy. What is it called in English? That is often like in the whole narrative of Bolsonaro. It's like supporting this group of people is will withdraw rights from the traditional family, etc. So they told me that it's really important to show off the people that giving them more rights doesn't withdraw any rights, and it's very important to have this human rights education, this anti-homophobia education, really to like show them off that in the end everybody wins when you bring back this value of fundamental rights to the lives of the people.
And maybe we can add to that also what she refers to as the black box. I guess in every country or every history has black boxes, and also this idea of not being able to transmit to the next generation, and how important it is to go back in history and tell the stories in order to be able to not repeat it too obviously. So, yeah.
Yes, she was. Amnesty International in Brazil is also screening the film with Carol Benjamin, and in one occasion she also said one of the problems of Brazil is that we are having a society of impunity. That what she's also referring to with this amnesty law, which was amnesting at the same time also giving amnesty also to the perpetrators of human rights violations. So she, at one point, she said it would be so important to overcome this culture of impunity, but also another thing is that, like to maybe finish on a hopeful note. Yes, the film was able to be screened in, I think, during 4 weeks in the cinemas in Brazil. And it was received very well, and I think it also gives back a lot of hope to a lot of Brazilians who are maybe sometimes at this situation now, maybe also losing a little bit of this hope. So it was received very well, and I think it's very important to do all this. Dealing with the past and to overcome this culture of impunity.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for joining us here. Thank you very much, and all the best. Stay healthy and continue. Have a nice rest of the evening and festival at the Human Rights Film Festival. Good evening.